Determine the equation in general form of the tangent line to y equals cube root of x squared minus 1 over the cube root of x at x equals negative 1. So there are 3 steps to approaching this question here. The first one is going to be to find the slope of the tangent line at x equals negative 1. So slope of the tangent at x equals negative 1. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is going to be to determine the y-coordinate at x equals negative 1. So y-coordinate and then finally, the third step is to determine the equation of the tangent line. Now, over here, when we determine the equation of the tangent line, we can use the slope point form for a linear function, converting it then to general form. So for the slope point form, we're going to need the slope, which we're getting in step 1, and we're going to need the x and the y coordinates of one point on that tangent line, which we're going to get in step number 2 here. So let's start with step number 1. So we need to differentiate this expression and then evaluate it at x equals negative 1. So the first step, because we're dealing with radicals and powers, well, we have this radical in the denominator. So what we want to do is we want to convert this to exponential form, and we want to also eliminate this radical in the denominator. So we can rewrite this as y equals x to the power of 2/3. That's going to be the first term. The second term is going to be x to the power of negative 1/3. Negative sign because we apply the negative exponent law. Let me just clean this up a little bit here. Negative 1/3. Now we can apply the power rule and differentiate this. So y prime is going to be 2/3 times x to the power of 2/3 minus 1 minus negative 1/3 times x to the power of negative 1/3 minus 1. Okay, so we can clean this up a little bit here. We're going to get 2/3 times x to the power of negative 1/3. And then we're going to get plus here. We have double minus signs. Plus 1/3 times x to the power of negative 4/3. Okay. Now we're going to convert these this exponential forms, these two exponential forms, back to radical form. And we will also apply the negative exponent law, so that because we have the minus sign, so that the radicals are going to end up in the denominator. So we can rewrite this as 2/3 times the cube root of x plus 1/3 times the cube root of x to the power of 4. Now we're going to set x equal to negative 1. So that means that we're going to get y prime of negative 1 equals 2/3 times the cube root of negative 1 plus 1/3 times the cube root of negative 1 to the power of 4. Okay, so if we now evaluate this, we're going to get, so this first term here, the cube root of negative 1 is just negative 1. So this first term here is going to become negative 2/3. And then we have so 1 is negative 1 to the power of 4 is positive 1. Cube root of positive 1 is just 1. So this whole term becomes plus 1/3. If we now just add this up, we're going to get negative 1/3. So this here, this is our slope of tangent at x equals to negative 1. Okay. So we have the slope. Now in step 2 we need to evaluate the original expression, this one right here, the original function, at x equals to negative 1 to get the corresponding y coordinate. So we're going to do y of negative 1 equals, and we're going to get the cube root of negative 1 squared minus 1 over the cube root of negative 1. Okay. So negative 1 squared is positive 1. Cube root of positive 1 is just 1. The cube root of negative 1 is negative 1. 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1, but there's already a minus sign here, so it's going to become plus 1. So y of negative 1 equals to 2. And now we can put all of this together using the slope point form. So y minus y1 equals the slope of the tangent line times x minus x1. Our y coordinate was 2. Our slope was negative 1/3. And our x coordinate was negative 1, so it's going to become plus 1 here. Now we just have to simplify this and rearrange this so we get it in general form. So I'm going to multiply in the negative 1/3 into the bracket. Okay. At the same time, I'm going to move all the terms over to the same side. So I have, let's start with this multiplication. So we have negative 1/3 x minus 1/3. And then we are moving the y and the negative 2 over to the other side. So it's negative y plus 2 equals to 0. Now we can combine. So first of all, we don't want to have, when we answer in general form, we don't want to have quotients. Okay. We also don't want to have the first term is the x term. We don't want that to be we don't want it to be negative. So what we're going to do here, we're going to multiply both sides by negative 3 times negative 3. So if we do that, we get positive x, positive 1 for the second term, positive 3y, and then negative 6 equals to 0. And now we can sort of wrap this up. We're going to get x plus 3y minus 5 equals to 0. So that's going to be the equation of the tangent line in general form.